Hello and welcome back to the Lee Summit Town Hall podcast. I am your host, Nick Parker. This is a good time to remind everyone that this podcast is brought to the good people of Lee Summit by Budget Blinds of Lee Summit.
Budget Blinds!
There it is. Budget Blinds is a great local business run by a great local family. They not only participate and support things all throughout Lee Summit, but they've got a great company. They are your home for enlightened style shades. And Jason, they are also our robot shade overlords.
Oh, hell.
That's right. That's the place to go for all of your window treatment needs, some of your home decor needs you can get there. But most importantly, this is what we have for 10 years now. We wanted to remind the people this is the place to go, that if you want to use your smart speaker, your phone, your tablets, whatever, to open those shades, you can do that with blinds and shades purchased at Budget Blinds.
I thought I was going to hold out against the robot shade overlords like for a long time, despite all of the jokes and all of the thing for all those years. But man, I'm coming around to the robot shade overlords. Little by little.
All will succumb to the pressure at some point.
You will be assimilated to the robot shade overlords.
When you're ready to make your home a smart home, go see our friends at Budget Blinds right in the heart of downtown. Tell them Nick sent you. Jason, this is an important episode today.
You might want to mention that I'm here, by the way, because
Jason Norbury's
it's
back,
assumed,
people.
but hey, everybody.
I want you to know, we are, for whatever reason, we're not in the studio today. We're not in the vault. We are recording from our respective home offices. So this feels old school. I'm falling into old habits.
Very, a little pandemic, to be honest.
Very, very, very much so. But I think this is an important episode. It's, at least for me, Jason, a nostalgic one. Because this 2026 election marks 10 years from when we started the show during the 2016 election.
It's true. And this one has been, I think we can safely say, a little calmer than the 2016 election.
It is not without drama, but it's not the same kind
not without
of drama.
No. And then the following year, just the continuing drama for quite a stretch there as we grew this
What
podcast.
we want to do with this special episode this week, I feel like this is your next very special episode of Blossom. On this episode, we want to take a little bit of time. We had our mayoral candidate forum. We hosted a few weeks ago at Bridge Space, and then we posted the audio from that for people to listen to. We did not do council forums, and really, honestly, I'm going to tell everybody why. I didn't want to schedule all those. It was hard enough to find a date that worked with the two mayor candidates and you and I, than to try to do, 3, 5, way too many candidates. So what we want to do is take.
Yeah, we have. If you keep in mind, there are 5 council races this year, not 4. 5 council races this year.
So what we want to do is take a little bit of time. Let's go through the council races a little bit and just talk a little bit about what we know about these candidates. And I think, as we often do, Jason, take a little bit of time. What are those questions still remaining? So, you and I, or the listeners, voters here, what are some questions that are still out there as they look to see who they're going to choose to pick for their respective council races? Let's start off. And let's remind everybody who is running. You can go to link2leesummit.com. That's the number 2, link2leesummit.com. You can find our candidate Q&As, which each of the candidates, and I want to commend every single mayor and council candidate responded to our Q&A this session. So thank you.
Thank you to them, by the way. That's not always been the case, and we're happy that they did.
And I think it's a good and easy way for them to get their messages and their perspectives on local issues out to the voters. So thank you to each of you for doing that. We have, Jason, in District 1, Mia Pryor is running unopposed. So we're not really going to talk about that one very much. In District 2, we have 2 newcomers, Sherry Fraser and Will Kraus. Is Will really is he a newcomer?
Well, he's a city council newcomer, but not certainly not a political newcomer in the city as these things
Sherry
go.
has been a candidate
District
before,
3,
and Will Kraus, as you just kind of alluded to, served in Jefferson City.
Will Kraus has been a candidate for things before. Yes, that is I've definitely Definitely true. In District 3, we have two candidates running, Dana Arth and Melanie Adkins. And then in District 4, there are two races in District 4. There is one for the 4-year seat, which is currently going to be run for the candidates for that are Donnie Funk and Zach Al-Shawish.
And Donnie Funk filed for the 4-year, even though he is in the seat he is vacating by running for the 4-year. Is now open a 2-year term.
Seat.
He was appointed by the council to fill the remainder of Fred DeMauro, his seat after he resigned. So running for that 2-year seat in District 4 is Bob Jones. Might be a familiar name. Bob was mayor of Lee Summit back in the 80s. And then Scott Shepard and Joanna Cravens.
There you go. So those are people. So all but one of the council races are contested, and boo to those of you in District 1 who didn't choose to run in opposition. Nothing to say about Councilmember Pryor and her run for re-election, but we are firm believers on this podcast in contested elections, and we only have one uncontested election, which is good, but we should have zero. Zero is the right number of uncontested elections.
So, Jason, I think here's how I kind of want to start things off. Let's look a little bit, like I said, all of those Q&As are out there on our website. There are websites and social media pages for all
what website is that, Nick?
To leesummit.com. I can't say it enough.
Okay, let's check.
Reaching 20,000 people every month. There are websites, there are social media pages for each of these candidates. There's many opportunities for you to go out and find. But one of the things I wanted to do was, what do we know about them so far? What are some of the hot topics that are kind of permeating through all of the council races through each of the district? What are some of those topics that we feel like all of them are talking to?
All right, we're going to leave the big one for last, but let's cover some of the ones that are out there. I think some of the issues that are appeared regularly on almost all the candidates' questionnaires and have come through in campaign materials they're going through is infrastructure. There's always some questions about how infrastructure is. As some of the typical things like my neighborhood floods and what are we going to build these roads on and those sorts of things, and how people address that.
How many
There's
roundabouts can we get in Lee Summit?
Right, and how many crooked roads that don't connect to other things are we going to have in this subdivision? I think these are important questions. So there's that one. There's always conversation about the police and fire. Obviously, they're both of the unions that represent those members for Lee Summit are very politically active, and so they have been expressing their voice in signs and other things throughout the city. But in addition to that, their contracts are coming up. Their collectively bargained contracts are coming up. And so there's conversation about that and some differences in, I think, tone and process between some of the candidates that you may want to look at and think through that. Some of them are, every single candidate is pro-police and pro-fire. All of them will tell you that. Every one of them. None of them are running as an anti-fire department. They're not running on an anti-fire department stance in any way, shape, or form. All of them think they need to be competitively paid and what have you. But I think there's some differences in the way that they go about that, what they think the council's role in that should be, and how they think those things should come about. So you can read those if that is one of your strong points of interest. You can certainly pay attention
and I
to
think,
that.
While that is a common topic and it's come up, it is not the head of the pack like it has, a couple elections ago. I mean, we did a poll a couple elections ago, Jason, through Link to Lee Summit, and that was the number one thing for voters, that was how they were deciding their candidates, was right. Where they stood during the negotiations, because that was while they were negotiating their contract.
And if you go back 8 years, right, you can see where that may have actually had an impact on the District 3 race, that Beto Lopez won by 4 votes in that. And those negotiations back in 2018 were very contentious. A lot of that was done from the podium, the public comment podium, as well as from the dais. We had a lot to say about all of that at the time, and then the final votes on how that would be dealt with, and some of those votes came down, and it probably had an impact on the outcome of at least that election, if not others, as it was going through. So they're important things, and people care, and I think public safety is, and having a well-funded and well-respected public safety forces are something that the citizens of this community do care about.
And it should be noted that this is a much different tone, it seems like, this time as they get going in their negotiations. They're also coming off one of
Yeah,
the longest contracts that they've had in recent memory.
right. And yeah, this does have much more of a feel of, yeah, we're all going to get there. We're just working our way towards the
Might take
final
a bit, but we're
solution
going
on
to
the
get there.
process, and
You know,
we're
yeah,
going
and
to
I
get
think
there.
the other big thing, Jason, this is I'm curious, kind of your response on this. I think the other big thing we talk about is you can sum it up in one word: in growth. Uh, we have seen incredible growth over the last 10, 15, 20 years. It's not stopping. You know, the reports and the studies that you can get to on the City of Lee Summit's website tell you that, you know, we're expecting another 20,000 people over the next 10 years. You know, so obviously I think that leads to great discussion about what the future looks like for our city.
Right. And I think that that does a lot of things. I mean, so there's nothing that doesn't isn't touched on that, right? There are
No,
cities in our
infrastructure, fire,
metropolitan
police.
infrastructure, right? It touches on all of those sorts of things. But I mean, there are communities in our metropolitan area that are pretty, I don't want to say stagnant, but they're not growing. Certainly not growing at the pace, either raw numbers or percentage, that
And
Lee
also
Summit
don't
is.
have great
And
swaths of land that are coming online.
right, they don't have, yeah. I mean, Raytown's out of dirt, man. They don't have anywhere to, like, put more things and more people. So Lee Summit has lots and lots of available dirt to work with, and some of it is actually going to be available to us now with the Mormon Church land and all the things that are coming on through that process. So one of the things, so growth really does touch on that. It's like, it's a fact that the city is going to grow. And so the question then becomes, how does growth affect these things in the city? So how does it affect infrastructure in terms of roads and water and stormwater and all of those sorts of things? How does it affect our public safety services, right? Fire and police, and how those resources are created and allocated throughout the course of the city? How does it affect our housing choices, right? In terms of, like, if we're going to add 20,000 people over the next decade or so, what does that look like? Where are they going to live? Are they going to live in apartments or townhomes or small homes or giant homes or whatever? And how do we accommodate that as a large piece of the city? But that growth really does drive a lot of the things that make the city. It's both caused by and then causes more,
Right.
right? Growth, because it causes all, like, we have these cool things like our downtown and the availability of the retail and the highway access and all of those things causes growth, but then more people come in, more businesses follow, and it builds upon itself. I mean, if you look at Overland Park, isn't that far away from being the largest city in Kansas, and it's a suburb in the metro. So just, I mean, there are those things at hand that we really have to pay attention to, but they've had that same thing. It's like, with that growth, they have to manage that and how it comes and where do those people live and what are they going to do, where are they going to drive, and all of those sorts of things to go into. And so I think, like, that's that big growth. And there's some differences in the way people, I say, like, the tone people have about growth. Some are talking about it in a balanced, balanced growth or managed growth or whatever. And others are like saying, maybe we've done enough of this kind of thing or that kind of thing, and we should push our growth in this one direction. And so you can read those things and look into that and see a little bit about what the differences are in between the candidates in that. And that leads us, I think, very naturally into our final big talking point for subject matters. And we've got more after that, but, like, subject matter with that. And
Right,
Nick, why
right,
don't you
and I
lead us
think
in that
that's, you know,
direction?
that's the big thing on everybody's mind has been housing development. You know, what is our focus going forward? We've seen a ton of development, especially, and this I think is where the contention is, Jason, is we've seen a lot of multifamily development, a lot of senior development, senior housing, and I think while we understand that you know that's a need, you know, the strategic plan has called for that. It's called for a certain amount of that by percentage of all the other types of development. But there's been a lot of pushback as to, are we ignoring other needs by focusing so much on the multifamily?
Yeah, and I think you could say that there is a lot of expressed, especially in these candidate questionnaires. I think we could. I'll try to say it nicely. There's some discomfort with the growth in the percentage of the population that is housed in apartments or what have you, in terms of like units versus in the housing units or people units in the city. And we are getting in that range where we're not, if we're not all the way at the numbers proposed by the strategic plan or the comprehensive plan, we're approaching that, especially when you take into account the units that are in the pipeline that are coming there. And so there is a natural question to have about what aren't we doing and what have you.
And I think it gets
As
complicated
we're
also with just the way our housing market has changed in the last 10 years. Just everything has increased in price, right? I
that is
mean,
true.
you're not building a new home in Lee Summit for under 350,000.
I
And
think almost four
yeah,
now, but yeah.
and that is drastically different than when, say, we built a home, my wife and I built a home and moved back to Lee Summit in 2009. Right.
Mhm.
So I think, when it compounds that issue, just the change in pricing, trying to figure out where everything stands as you look around.
Right. And so I think you see some tone differences here as well, or ways to approach this. There are some candidates that are, uh, I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that they're just anti-apartment. They're just no more apartments, full stop, don't want them, don't like them. And
And
there's that
and
sentiment that
that
is
is
in the
look,
city.
that's fine. And if that's your stance.
Right. No, I don't agree with that stance personally, but that is a viable or a valid stance to take if that's what you want. Now there are outcomes from all of, like, regardless of your stance, there are outcomes and follow throughs, and we don't want to spend a ton of time getting into all of that. I think most of the longtime listeners to this podcast are well aware that we can I get rolling right into housing policy and never stop. And
No,
Nick told me that we're not
actually, that
allowed
was
to do
that
that
was
today.
part of the terms of you coming back.
Right. And so, but I think that there's some tone in that. So there are some that are like they take a much more direct, hardline stance. I think, if you want to, I'm not going to pick we won't get into the, but like, Councilmember Rader in her campaign for mayor has taken a far more no apartment stance than Councilmember Lopez has taken as
Well, and
just
I
an
think
easy comparison. And you see that divide
that's a
here.
good conversation to have. And I think especially the point of this is comparing approaches and perspectives of different candidates. And I think it's a good example is that mayor's race, right? Where Cinda Rader is coming at it from what was the term she used? Pause and reassess. I think
Yeah.
when it comes to the plan that the city has adopted and is following, whereas, Beto Lopez is well, let's just keep comparing to where we're at on those percentages, pieces of the pie that it says we're supposed to build toward.
Hmm.
And he wants, he really is looking at let's continue using that as our guideline. Now he has said there's always time to step back and study things and take the pulse of the city. But that's where those two I think really show a difference in how they want to approach what that plan is telling us to do and if we need to keep following it.
Right. And so I think that's one level question. You can kind of look at the candidates and start to parse them on that. And so wherever you, the voter, may fall on that may help you sort of look at that. I think another thing to look in, and this is a little bit deeper question than just because look, all of every one of these answers is talking point, to a certain extent, or, uh, you know, clip a clip out for that, like buzzwords and what have you, for that sort of thing. And so you've got to ask a little bit different. And so you see a lot of this here is even the ones who are, who may be in alignment with Beto Lopez on these sorts of things, where they want to keep like kind of moving forward with the plan as it currently is, and as we adjust the percentages, what have you, or those who are more in line with Councilmember Rader on those sorts of things. There still is this idea that we're not getting all of the housing that we need. I don't think anybody is out there going, the only thing we should build are, and I'm going to use the pejorative here, McMansions at half a mil a pop.
Is McMansion still a
You,
thing? Is that still the word we use?
I don't know. I mean,
You're old.
I've looked at some of the floor plans, so maybe, but uh, we're going to throw shade at our developers here today. But I think that you see, so there is that, but like the real estate market is the real estate market, and it responds to what we're seeing. And I think as a development whole, we're seeing the real estate market itself push us in two directions. One is luxury apartments, and the other is large, high dollar single family homes. Those are the predominant modes of housing that are being built in Lee Summit and a lot
Right.
in
The
a lot of
market says
places.
that's where, if I'm a developer, the market says that's where I can get the margins that I want to build things.
Right. And then so I think there's a lot of discomfort, and maybe this is a conversation that the council needs to have, but I think it would be valid and very useful to have the candidates, if you get to talk to one, ask this question. Okay, what about that other piece that's in the comprehensive plan of this middle housing, right? The missing middle housing, whether there's smaller single family homes or townhomes or duplexes or fourplexes or whatever,
Building on
all that
smaller
stuff.
lots.
Right. Small scale apartments, small, like all whatever, pick your unit or pick your phase, but that middle ground of stuff. We're not getting enough of that by the percentages in the comprehensive plan, or really the market isn't really leaning in that direction. So a great question is, what do you, the city council member, if you were elected, think we need to do to encourage that growth, that kind of growth, right? To move the market maybe off of what I'm going to call the easy money, right, onto this harder money. And there are lots of ways to get there potentially, and many theories to do that. But I suspect some of our candidates don't actually have an answer to that question. And I think that's how you're going to differentiate the candidates who maybe are more thoughtful about these issues from the ones who are just parroting what they think are the popular talking points of the time.
Yeah, I think that's the big question, is how can you either create the market, I guess really you're not going to create it, but influence the creation of a market or changing that market to fit those things. And the example that we often hear and we use is, what's the young professional? How can they buy a home and live in Lee Summit? If you're a first year teacher,
Right.
you're a first year police or
if you
fire, those things, we want you to come here. We want you to start your family here. We want you to build your life here. But right now the choices are really luxury apartment or giant home.
or live in Independence or wherever,
Right.
or
So I think
Oak Grove or Pleasant Hill or wherever. Pick your space.
how do you
And I think
influence it
that's the
as a
question.
council member? How do you influence that to bring developers to the table that are going to do that kind of thing?
Right. And let's see if their candidates can really answer those questions. And I think we made an effort at the mayoral forum to ask some of that, and we did not get what I will call
We don't
thorough
get
or
great answers.
satisfactory answers on that. But I mean, I think that's the thing, is like, because that's the question. Like, it's one thing to campaign on any topic, housing, police and fire, infrastructure expenditures, but at some point the way the city influences these things is to put their money where their mouth is, and that is from as simple as changing zoning ordinances or to allow or encourage certain types of development, incentivizing certain types of development, not incentivizing other types of development, things of that nature. And what are these people? Can these people put that to voice in a way that that they can take to the dais when they get there and actually have that conversation as they go forward?
And I think those are the same questions, Jason, can be used, or at least that same line of thinking, when you flip the script and you talk about commercial development. We have all the time people are like, well, we need this in town. We need that, right? Or, the one we all wait for every time there's, hey, something new's being built, is everyone's like, let's have a Trader Joe's. Right.
Right.
We don't really get to pick who comes. the business, the developer, but we can set the table to try to attract them. And so I think using that same line of sight and thinking, hey, council member or prospective council member, what can you do so that that thing wants to come here or can come
Right.
here?
And you can Right, and you can see, some examples of that throughout the city. I mean, the sort of the longest standing one is Summit Woods, right? That center with the Target and the Best Buy and all that stuff in there is, 20 plus years or 20 years old now, or very near that, and or more than that now, and a long standing, that was the city made a decision. Hey, we need a large scale retail center to compete with other cities to give the amenities to our people that they want, and they put together the package and they did it, and it has been, generally speaking, extremely successful through multiple generations of things. More recently, Streets of West Pryor, that was a lot of city owned land and some other developable land that the city had kind of accumulated over time, knowing that they wanted a retail mixed use spot there, and they said, this is what we want. And then the developer came and it got mixed around. But even that has limits, right? If you look on the very north side of that, overlooking the highway, there is an empty space that is waiting for the hotel that may never happen on that. So even within that, there are limits. The city said, we want a hotel, we want mixed use, we want housing, and we want retail, and we want drive-through stuff, and we want, yada, yada, yada. And they've gotten almost all of it in some form or another. I don't think a car wash was on the original plan, but this is the nature of development and all that. So you can see these things where the city has set their foot down and said, we want this thing. Sometimes with success, sometimes without success, and they've really pushed that stuff forward. So then the question then becomes on that economic development. What kind of economic development do we want? Opinions differ in these. Some are tired of big box retail. Some want to be a little bit more market driven or want to focus on small business development, local business development, things of that nature, as they go through it. And so you can kind of see that in there. And then again, that follow-up question is, agree or disagree? Okay, what are you going to do to bring that about, right? What are you going to do?
And this all circles around and leads back to that discussion of how do you feel about incentive packages? And
Yeah.
how do you want to best utilize them to bring in particular types of development? And I think we can go on and on and on, Jason, and we can circle this issue over and over. I think those highlight really just the key topics that permeate through each of the district council races and the mayor's race.
Right. And I think you can take that framework that we've talked about here, the whatever that issue is, okay, what does that mean? Right. I mean, if you want to be like really on top of it, it's like, okay, you know, if you want to pay our police and fire the very top dollar range in the city and the metropolitan area, um, how are you going to do that? Like that's going to cost a certain amount of money. How are you going to raise that revenue? Or what things are you going to cut in exchange for that? Those are the deeper questions to dig into with each of these topics, so that don't let the candidate at your door just spout the one line and wander off. Make them
Make them
squirm a
earn your
little
vote.
bit. That's
Make them earn your vote.
they trust me, ask any sitting council member or past term council member, and those phone calls that they get, like, why is this happening? And where they have to come back with an answer, those are sometimes the most difficult and often the most rewarding things that they can do, is when they can answer those questions and help people understand or get a result that they're looking for at that. This is your first free shot at all of these people to come in and say, hey, what are you going to do for this topic or that topic, and really, what does
Well,
that mean?
and
Like, don't just give me the campaign line.
answering that door knock, and having that conversation with the candidate too is the first way to do, what's the one thing every candidate talks about and every resident talks about? We want more transparency. We want more access with our elected officials. This is your first chance to do that, is to answer the door, let them talk, but then allow yourself to ask the follow-up question, to ask okay, what's next? Do you want to do that? What does that mean? How do we do it? because that's going to tell me whether or not I think you're the best person for the job. And this, Jason, leads us to our last kind of bit of conversation, I think, is let's talk about you, the voter. Let's talk about the voters, and let's talk about what we think about our city right now. Because as you look at these slates of candidates, really what you want to ask yourself is, how do we feel about our city right now? How do we feel about our community? Where are we? Are we in a good spot? Are we angry? Are we worried? And I think that can steer us to who are we looking for, because based on how you feel, what kind of leader do I want to either, if I feel good, keep feeling good, or if I feel like there's a lot of need out there, to go fill those needs.
Right. And I think that that's a tone. I mean, so we've come off, 8 years with the current mayor, and and Bill Barrett had a very specific leadership style on the council, and there were quiet and less quiet grouses about some of the ways he went about there, but in the end, he had a functioning, worked with a functioning council, and they achieved a lot of things over that. We are at the end of that time, and so you can take this from the mayor on down. If you think about it, there is the possibility that 6 seats or 5 seats, really, I guess one of the seats is going to be the same as it was, are going to be new on the council. That is possibility. Between, we're going to have a different mayor, we're going to have some different people in 2, 3, the 2-year term in District 4.
Well, and
Like,
there'll have to be an
that's
appointment
4.
if if
Right.
one
One, yeah.
wins the
So
mayor job.
depending on
Yeah.
who wins, there may be so half or more of the council is going to turn over, and so that is a lot. You can ask yourself the question then: what do I want this council to be as a reflection or a leader in the city? Right? Do I want them to be? Do we need firebrands? Right? Somebody to come in and lob grenades around? Do we want somebody on there who's going to be? The phrase I keep using is the steady hand on the tiller, right? Or we're doing great. Let's just keep doing great. What are their, how are they going to, their reaction to their interactions with city manager are going to be? Because that is, as a interaction with city staff, that's their outlet, right? So how are they going to work that relationship in public and private with the city manager? How are they going to go through that process? Do we want somebody who's going to really drive and push hard for a lot of change, or do we want less change or no change? I guess that's one of the options available to us. And you can go through that and think about those characteristics of that, not only in just the race you have, although that's the one you get to vote in, so you should put that number one, but then a little bit more, in terms of that whole council, and when you're voting for the mayor, the same thing, right? Because the mayor's going to sort of set that tone, and some of that's going to be dealing with there. And then I think that leads us to that last piece of leadership. What are, with 50% or more of council turnover, there's a lot of room for new leadership on the council, new leadership in terms of their relationship with the mayor and the other council members, with the city, with staff, with Pickett, right out there. What does that look like, and what do you want to see in that?
And I think to tack onto that, when you look at the mayor race, I think let's look at, as a voter, as an individual, okay, at least half of that council is going to be new. When I look at candidates for mayor, in addition to, whose vision do I like more, who's going to be able to rally that council and to lead that council to make whatever vision that is happen. And I think you have to look at that a little bit as well, kind of on top of what their vision is. Do you like that? Do you like one better than the other? Is then the second step is that one that I like going to be able to bring everybody with them?
Right, and those were we started the mayoral candidate questionnaire, or forum with that. It's like, how are you going to be um, different, or the same as Bill Baird? Like, what qualities do you want to emulate? What qualities do you want to differentiate yourself from? How do you go about things differently? Um, you know, like, there was plenty of friction inside the city council at times over the last 8 years, but that's going to be the case no matter the makeup of the body. You're just never going to get that kind of political, ideological, and vision alignment of all 9 people just going like this direction. But they all have to be able to work together in some form, and somebody or some bodies, more, it's not just the mayor, it's the mayor pro tem and the other council members rallying groups together to achieve the goals that they want to achieve, to be able to do that. And what do you want to see with that? And who amongst these do you think can actually pull that off? It's a valid question to ask as you're evaluating these candidates. Unless you're in District 1 and then you just have to vote for me.
Good on you, Mia, for putting your name in the hat again. But really, come on, where were the other people filing?
Look, all we were asking was for competition. That's it. That's all we were asking. This is not a referendum on Mia Pryor by any stretch. I'm just saying we just wanted the competition.
And the other thing I want, Jason, well, 2 things. But the other thing related to the election that I want is let's everybody show up and vote. It's not a presidential election, so what, average 12%, 14% on a good year in a non-presidential in turnout. I mean, I'd like to get that higher, please.
Right. I mean, you're talking some of these council races are going to have 2,000, 2,500 votes total. So your vote matters. We've had council elections decided by 4 votes. We've had state house representative or state representative races decided by like 18 votes. These in Lee Summit, this isn't just everywhere, but they're in Lee Summit. So these votes do matter. And so your turnout and your showing up, whether you are in favor of things kind of staying the same or you're really wanting something to change, getting out to vote is the way to make that work. So show up and vote, people.
One last thing, folks. Just a few days after you listen to this, it's the Royals opening day. So it's time for baseball.
It's time for baseball. Our boys have done great at the World Baseball Classic. They basically ran the show. And now it's time to bring them home and bring some World Baseball pride back to Kansas City.
There we go. Highest ratings for the World Baseball Classic, the Kansas City market.
We love our boys.
Love our boys. Boys are going to play some ball. Jason, hey, I'm glad to have you back, man. 10 years that we've been doing the show, and we are nearing 900 episodes now, and another election coverage. We love it.
Eventually, Nick, you're going to get a real job, and you're going to have to change how you do this whole thing. No, you're not.
No, I'm not. I married a teacher.
Who wants that?
Dollar bills fall from the heavens. That's what happens. Hey, our next episode, we're gonna take a look at the Board of Education races. Those Q&As are also available at link2leesummit.com. Go check them out. Hey, if you want to be one of the people that gets that newsletter every Monday, headlines delivered right to you, you can sign up there on the website for our Monday news link email. That'll just come right to your inbox every single Monday. That'll wrap us up for this episode. We'll talk to everybody next time.